Permission to be Powerful is a reader-supported publication. To receive new posts and support my work, consider becoming a free or paid subscriber. Editor's note. This is a speculative narrative woven from real-world events, public data, and patterns of corruption that repeat across industries and decades. Not everything in this story can be verified. But here's what can. The pattern is real. The silence is systemic. And the people trying to warn us keep vanishing. Read with curiosity, not blind certainty. But don't look away. Now let's get started. Dear Permission to be Powerful reader, a cockpit filled with smoke. A pilot collapses mid-air. And a powerful global elite, the warning he tried to send never reached the public. Until now. This is the story of Flight 4087, a flight that never made it home. But it's also a story about something darker, something most people still can't quite say out loud. That psychopaths run the world. And they don't just pull strings, they set fires, they burn down entire systems, and they ensure nobody ever hears the last words of those who try to stop them. Captain Thomas R. wasn't just a pilot. He was a former military-grade test flyer with over 20 years of spotless record, and a hobby for documenting malfunctions most pilots ignore. According to his wife and private notes found in his study, he was also deep into something, a pattern. One that involved engine malfunctions, supply chain delays, and an alarming rise in near-death incidents that had nothing to do with pilot error, and everything to do with sabotage. I know that sounds wild, but I'm going to walk you through what happened. October 3, 2023. Flight 4087 lifted off from Istanbul en route to Lisbon. 32 minutes in, the cockpit filled with smoke. Not just any smoke. This was chlorinated, toxic, engine corrosive fume. Co-pilot blacked out first. Captain Thomas rerouted toward the closest landing site. He made it within 3 minutes of safety before slumping forward on the controls. His final words, barely recorded through static. The system wasn't supposed to. And then nothing. That's where the official report ends. But behind the scenes, that's where this story begins. Because Captain Thomas wasn't just flying that day. He was tracking a whistleblower leak that connected a series of airline disasters to 3 US-based firms that had quietly acquired manufacturing rights for essential aviation components. Using shell companies that traced back to, you guessed it, political donors, former CIA operatives, and a certain billionaire whose name you've already heard this year. For all the wrong reasons. He'd circled those firms in red ink in his notebook. Underlined one phrase twice. They knew the parts were faulty. Before we go further, let me make something clear. Not all bad people are psychopaths. Not all CEOs. Not all politicians. Not all media figures. But when you look at the profiles of real psychopaths, diagnosed ones, studied in labs, tracked by neuroscientists like Dr. James Fallon, who ironically discovered he had the same brain structure himself, you find a disturbing pattern. Low amygdala activation. Little to no fear. High executive function. Bright enough to plan 3 steps. Superficial charm. Think Ted Bundy, Enron's Jeff Skilling, or even Bernie Madoff. But here's the killer feature. No remorse. None. Which makes them ideal for systems where remorse is inconvenient. War. Finance. Corporate espionage. Surveillance capitalism. Clandestine politics. And now, they've burrowed into every corner of power. Kevin Dutton, author of The Wisdom of Psychopaths, found that CEOs share eerily similar psychometric profiles with serial killers. Not all of them kill, but they're the kind of people who could, without blinking. And that's who's designing your news, your medicine, your vote, your life. Captain Thomas wasn't the only one. In the last 4 years, a former FAA inspector died in a house fire. Gas leak ruled accidental. An aviation blogger went missing in Peru after publishing internal emails showing Boeing rushed the 737 MAX relaunch. A whistleblower from Raytheon fell from his apartment window. An anonymous Reddit user, who claimed to have access to Department of Defense aircraft failure data, posted a 90-thread expose and disappeared 48 hours later. The media reported none of it, or buried it under polite phrases, tragic accident, unconfirmed, suicide. If that reminds you of how Jeffrey Epstein's name disappeared for 10 years after the first arrest, or how Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted without a single client being named, It should. That's the playbook. Control the narrative. Kill the source. Blame the wind. You might be thinking, why this story? Why now? Because I believe Flight 4087 was the canary in the coal mine. A signal. The lines between public safety and private profit are blurred more than ever. That psychopaths aren't just getting away with it. They're being rewarded. And their name turns to dust whenever someone dies trying to tell the truth. Unless we resurrect them. In the weeks after the crash of Flight 4087, most people moved on. The airline issued a formal apology. A vague maintenance issue was blamed. Investigators published a 19-page report without mentioning the captain's final words. But I couldn't move on. Something didn't sit right. And I'm not alone. A group of ex-airline engineers, pilots, and data analysts started digging. Quietly. Obsessively. One of them sent me a zip folder titled, "The Pilot Files, Trust Nobody." It was encrypted. Inside, I found the paper trail they'd tried to bury. Remember how Boeing was caught red-handed with its MKS system, a faulty anti-stall system that contributed to 2 crashes and 346 deaths? Now, imagine that software was intentionally installed in multiple aircraft without disclosure. According to the files, Flight 4087's oxygen flow control system had recently been replaced by parts manufactured by Galvian Aerotech. Never heard of them? That's the point. Galvian is a subsidiary of Heliox Capital, a private equity firm whose board includes a former NSA cyber warfare consultant, a pharmaceutical lobbyist with ties to Operation Warp Speed, and a former VP from BlackRock who now works as energy security advisor to the Pentagon. How does this link to the cockpit fire? According to a confidential whistleblower memo inside the folder, the Galvian OS-42 unit was programmed to bypass thermal shutdown thresholds to reduce power outages. This increases fume exposure risk 10x. FAA quietly waived inspection requirements. Translation? They intentionally disabled the kill switch that would have shut the fumes off. To avoid costly delays. To avoid bad press. To avoid caring. They did this on at least 57 aircraft. We only know about one that crashed. Could you let that sink in? Let's talk about who makes these calls. Who would approve something so dangerous just to hit quarterly earnings? There's a profile for that. Let me introduce you to actual studied psychopaths who held enormous power and got caught. 1. Richard Fuld, CEO of Lehman Brothers. A man so aggressive and emotionally indifferent that his colleagues referred to him as the gorilla. He led Lehman straight into the 2008 financial collapse and walked away with a $500 million fortune. During his testimony before Congress, he showed no remorse. Not even a flicker of shame. 2. Elizabeth Holmes. Theranos. She knew the blood tests didn't work. She lied under oath. She risked thousands of lives. I smiled while doing it. When finally convicted, she tried to paint herself as the real victim. 3. Jeffrey Skilling. Enron convicted of 19 counts of fraud and conspiracy. One psychiatrist called him one of the most high-functioning sociopaths he'd ever studied. The world is littered with these types. High IQ. Zero guilt. Excellent at smiling while signing death warrants. Sound familiar? The most shocking part of the pilot files wasn't the parts list. It was the silence. FAA engineers flagged the Galvian OS-42 system 2 years before the crash. An internal memo, titled, "Oxygen Misfire Risk, Not for Release," warned of cascading smoke failure events in 6 aircraft models. And what happened next? A quiet meeting, a technical exemption, a non-disclosure clause for every engineer in the room. Here's a quote from one of them. "I wanted to go public, but my boss said I'd never work in aerospace again if I talked. When I asked him if he'd testify anonymously, he said something I'll never forget. You think Boeing's dangerous? These new firms make them look like daycare." Here's the most chilling part. Psychopaths don't see the world like you or I do. Getting caught isn't a threat. Proof that they've ascended above the rest of us, and we feed the beast with our silence. Remember the cockpit audio I mentioned in part 1? The pilot files timeline. A disturbing sequence of deaths, disappearances, and cover-ups tied to whistleblowers in aviation. June 2019. An FAA safety inspector files a confidential report about faulty oxygen systems in retrofitted Boeing aircraft. Follow-up inspection is delayed twice. The inspector dies in a house fire 4 months later. Ruled an accidental gas leak. March 2020. A popular aviation blogger publishes leaked internal emails showing rushed timelines for the 737 MAX relaunch. 2 weeks later, he disappears while hiking in Peru. The case remains unsolved. September 2021. An anonymous Reddit user, FlightData88, posts a 90-thread exposé on DoD aircraft failures and contractor corruption. Thread went viral. The account was deleted within 48 hours. The IP was traced to an apartment in Arlington, VA, which is now vacant. February 2022. A Raytheon engineer files a whistleblower suit alleging sabotage in thermal regulation components used in commercial jets. Falls from a 12th-floor apartment window before the first court date. Police rule it suicide. No video footage is available. October 2023. Captain Thomas R. dies on Flight 4087 after toxic fumes fill the cockpit. Final words. The system wasn't supposed to. No mention of this quote appears in the official report. December 2023. A cache of encrypted documents titled "The Pilot Files, Trust Nobody" was sent to a private investigator working on the Flight 4087 case. Files include parts lists, redacted memos, and whistleblower audio. There's a 10-second redacted section that's never been released. But the pilot files contain a draft transcript from the crash investigation team before it was censored. Here's what they heard. This is precisely what you'd expect from a pilot who realized, mid-flight, that he'd been set up. That the system was designed to fail. That he was never supposed to make it home. If you're angry, good. If you're scared, even better. But fear without action is just fuel for the machine. Here's what you can do right now. Tell people this story. Forward this post. Screenshot it. Print it. Please share it. Investigate where your airline parts come from. Look for the name Galvian or Heliox on earnings calls and maintenance reports. Support whistleblowers. They are the canaries. Protect them. Understand the pattern. When rich, influential people get away with crimes repeatedly, it's not luck. It's design. Never mistake silence for safety. The truth is almost always hiding in plain sight. Because here's the hard truth. The only reason psychopaths get to rule the world is because we let them. Time to pull the plug. Before the subsequent fire starts. Unlock the underground. Join permission to be powerful. VIP for the few who refuse to be controlled. If you've made it this far, if you're still reading when most people scroll past, if you've ever felt like something was off in the world and you couldn't unsee it, then this isn't just a newsletter, it's your new home. Because the truth is, predators rule us, psychopaths in suits, and the only way to stay free is to stay informed. VIP access, what you get when you join. 1. Elite stealth drops, 2x month. The essays they don't want you to read, ripped from real intelligence reports, whistleblower leaks, and stealth-coded copy, crafted with the structure of $10 million sales letters, but built to wake you up, not sell you lies. Recent drops include The Pilot Files, The Billionaire Who Set the Cockpit on Fire, P. Diddy, Predator Class 101, Twin Flames or Trauma Bonds, How the Elite Weaponize Love, Value, 197 month. 2. AI Codes to Supercharge Your Mind. You'll get exclusive prompts, frameworks, and back-end GPT codes that train AI to think like a genius copywriter, strategist, and street-level philosopher. This is how I run my business, blog, and inner healing, all through one AI brain trained to be twice as smart as ChatGPT out of the box. What's included? The Shadowwork GPT Prompt Pack, ADHD Coach GPT, the AI therapist I built to save my own life, Marketing Genius GPT, the AI strategist trained on $200+ million offers, the Twin Flame Trainer, prompts you to build your relationship oracle value, $497 one time, included, free 3. Full access to my memoir, Hell in Paradise. You'll get early access to my raw, unfiltered memoir, which explores the darkest moments of my life, from heartbreak to scams to spiritual awakening. This is the real story behind the firepower in every essay I write. When I was with her, I could have never become the man I am now. Value: $29, included free. 4. Private comment threads and VIP community. This isn't a "hey thanks" comment section. This is where survivors, seekers, and strategists trade insights, book recs, underground sources, and tactical mindset upgrades. I'll be there weekly, answering your comments and coaching you live. Value: priceless. There's nowhere else online like this. 5. First dibs on new products, plus 1.1. Access. As a VIP, you get early access to Twin Flame AI, Public Release Edition, the No Fucks Given Challenge, paid upgrade, the ADHD Deep Dive Pack, with bonuses, my masterclass on copywriting and persuasion for good. And when do I do live group calls or open one-on-one sessions? Only VIPs get invited. Reminder: this is not for everyone. This isn't therapy. It's not a safe space for pretending things are fine. This is a reclamation zone. If you're ready to stop playing small, if you're ready to take the mask off, if you're ready to live as the most potent version of yourself, then join me here. Join Permission to be Powerful. VIP just 8-month or 80-year cancel anytime. But you won't want to. Upgrade to VIP now. Because the people who run the world don't want you here. Which means you're exactly where you're meant to be. Until next time, Anton, dancer, writer, Buddhist creator of Permission to be Powerful. Permission to be Powerful is a reader-supported publication. To receive new posts and support my work, consider becoming a free or paid subscriber.